Hi, this is Molly. Thank you so much for joining me. If you haven't seen my first video yet, my intro video or welcome video, please, when you get a chance, watch that, and then you'll know a little bit more about me and why my channel is called Paper Zebras. And you're going to get to know more about me today because I really need to do a my story kind of video with Ehlers Danlos syndrome. Because while I want to talk about many other things on this channel, it is the prime reason why I'm here, to share my story, so it hopefully helps somebody else going through, whether it's Ehlers Danlos or any other condition, you know, just to get support. You need people to hear you, need people to listen to you, you need people that understand. Whether you ever meet that person or not, you can know that there's somebody that gets what you're going through. I'm going to kind of do a condensed version, almost like a timeline of my life with EDS so far, and then I will go in depth, you know, about certain parts in other videos. And if you have any questions about anything I mentioned, please don't hesitate to ask. I'm an open book for the most part. If I think that something I went through or sharing my story and it will help someone, I will definitely talk about it. I have no problem with that whatsoever. So actually, I think a lot of times that's why we go through some of the hard things that we do. It's so we can then in turn help other people with what they're dealing with, what they're scared of, what they're trying to figure out is wrong with them, going on with them. So, okay, timeline. EDS is genetic, so you're born with it. And I was trying to think of a couple of rules, like a top 3 truths about EDS that everyone should know. And I was racking my brain trying to think of them, and there's really only one that I could come up with that is definitely a truth about EDS. And that is that everybody is different. Every person with Ehlers Danlos syndrome is different. You have different symptoms, different severity, different time onset, some surgery works for some people, not for others. Certain people have, you know, POTS along with it, some don't. There's so many differences, and that is really the only one truth that I could come up with. You know, I thought pain, but not everybody has pain. You know, joint dislocations, but not everyone has that. And so it really is different for everyone. And the more people that get that and understand that, especially doctors who think that, oh, if you don't have stretchy skin, well, then you can't have EDS, or if you don't have joint dislocations, you can't have EDS, and that is so not true. And family members, friends that don't believe you or something like that, please tell them. They need to know that it is different for everyone. Okay, so my timeline. My childhood, for the most part, was fine. I had a lot of leg cramps. You know, I would have like kind of where my shins hurt, my bones hurt some, and my dad always said, oh, it's growing pains, it's normal, and it may very well have been. I don't think so, but it's possible it was just growing pains. I have had a lot of headaches. I would get headaches so badly that my dad would have to do this whole visualization thing with me. He would lay back on my bed and I would kind of nestle into him, and he would just do this whole visual thing with me, like meditation, very much like meditation, just to calm me down until it went away, to help loosen it up, until, you know, ice helped or meds helped or whatever they used back then. I can't remember exactly because it started pretty young. When I was 15, that's when I went to my first orthopedic surgeon. So I would say I probably started having knee pain around 14. That was my first real pain from it, was 14 years old. I was a swimmer, and breaststroke and backstroke were my best strokes at the time. I swam them all the time. That's what I always did in meets and everything. And, you know, I went to, I think, 5 different orthopedic surgeons, And the last one finally said it's breaststroker's knees, and I can't remember how to pronounce the real name of it, but it's basically the muscles on the outside of your knees get so much more overdeveloped because of the kick that they can push in on your kneecap. And, or I might be saying that backwards. It might be the other way around. It's been so long. So, I mean, my kneecap, now you can move it all over the place. You can move it all the way on its side. You can do everything. And, you know, with swimming, with training, I also ran a lot, and I lifted weights and, you know, squats and lunges and all of that stuff. So, it just kept getting worse and worse. And my dad actually sold orthopedic supplies. He, you know, would sell them to doctors, knees, shoulders, hips, and then he had all the braces and everything. And then he would go into the surgery and help the surgeon make sure they knew what they were doing with the equipment, that they were doing it correctly. So I had access to about every brace on the market back then. And the big one, none of the big ones helped at all, you know, with all the padding and all the straps and all that. None of those really helped. It was the simple patella strap, the one little thin patella strap that you know, Velcros on the back of your knee. That actually helped more than anything at that time. Just helped hold the patella in place, which helped hold the kneecap in place, which helped, you know, just take some of the pressure off. It did not stop me from swimming, of course. It didn't stop me from running or doing any of the normal things that I did. And actually, you know what? I just thought of a second truth. And tell me if you agree with me. I think it's probably a good second truth to say that everyone with EDS is pretty stubborn. We don't want to stop what we're doing, what we love, what's part of our life, and we don't want to stop. It's very hard to get us to stop. So maybe that is a second truth. If you think of any more, please let me know, and we'll talk about it, see if it is a universal truth for EDS people, us zebras. Okay, so at 15, actually I think I just turned 16 when I went to a doctor for my knees when I was at swim practice one night, and I went to push off the wall, and I couldn't. I couldn't use my left leg. It was, I didn't stop. I kept going. I just didn't push off with that leg and didn't really kick with it very much. But after that, I was put into a cast. This doctor told me if I wouldn't stop, he was going to stop me. Put me in a full leg cast when I had just changed from a private school to a public school, and had my homecoming in my new school, you know, boy, girl school, all this stuff, all this new stuff, and I had a full leg cast on. It was wonderful, a wonderful way to start going to a public high school. So I had that on for a few weeks, and then I went right back to it. I went to physical therapy. Of course, I've been in and out of physical therapy since I was, you know, 15, 16 years old. And with physical therapy, I remember them taking me into this room one night. They told me to wear my bathing suit. And I'd been going there for a while, and they were so frustrated with me. And they took me in this room, and they took all these measurements, and they did all this stuff. They were trying to figure out what on earth was going on, because the more that I did, the worse that I got. And they said that to me, the physical therapist, the assistants, and all that stuff. They said, we don't get it. The more you do, the worse you get. And of course now, you know, the light bulb goes off. But so when I stopped doing physical therapy and just did very simple isolated leg lifts and things like that, just to help support the muscles a little more on the inside and outside, and then it seemed to help some. I never went back to kicking breaststroke. Never, even when I swam in college. I had to tell my coach, I swam Division I at UMBC, University of Maryland, Baltimore County, and I had to tell my coach that I could not kick breaststroke. That was embarrassing. So, you know, it was fine. At the end of high school, so by 12th grade, I noticed that, like, when I would stretch before practice, I would put my arms up on the wall, and I would stretch, and I would hear this big pop. And it felt so good. It freaked people out and it scared them, but it felt so good. It was like this release of some kind. I don't know exactly what was popping, but, and I had to do it before every practice. And then it got to where I had to do it several times throughout the day. And then, you know, you kind of develop these party tricks where you can isolate your arm, you can pull it down and separate and stick your fingers in between your shoulders, and I could drop my arm back, and I had over 150 degrees external rotation. The head of my shoulder the head of my arm, you know, would come out of my armpit, would stick out. Yeah, and you're not supposed to do party tricks. It's hard not to. So then in college, my muscles in my like upper back started getting worse and worse, like to where they felt like I was being stabbed. Come to find out, it's because when your ligaments and tendons aren't holding your joints in place, your muscles try to take over. So they are working double time, triple time, and the knots in my upper back were ridiculous. And you know, then you get a lot of headaches with your neck and all this stuff. And then I had headaches too because I can pop my jaw out. I showed that in my first video too, I think. No, I showed that in my second video about medical alert bracelets. So yeah, just headaches, knots in my back, and shoulders were getting worse. I would ice before every practice. I would go back to the training room after practice and ice then. And by sophomore year, right before Christmas of sophomore year, I went to, I'd seen a surgeon a few times, you know, just trying to figure out what was going on. And he said he thought I had tears, probably the rotator cuff or the labrum. Again, this was 20 years ago. Oh, I feel old when I say stuff like that. So he recommended surgery, just arthroscopically, so to see what was going on. And so I had that scheduled right before Christmas, had this shoulder ended up being reconstructed. You know, he said, we'll start with scope and we'll see what happens. So I woke up, I remember this very distinctly, waking up, asking the nurse what happened, if they had to open up. And she said yes. And I ended up having tears in the rotator cuff, in the labrum. The bursa sac was so swollen and full, they could barely inject anything into it or do anything with it. And my ligaments were so loose, he told my parents that the moment he cut my skin open, my shoulder fell out. And I was so small that I didn't quite fit on the armrest of the table, so he had to hold my arm under his armpit. My dad said he stunk. He was so sweaty and awful when he came out. He said he was exhausted from this. And he had to do the surgery like that. So they drilled 3 holes in my bone, shoved my ligaments in there, and screwed them down. So I have 3 screws, you know, holding my ligaments into my arm bone. And a year later, I had to have the same surgery on my right side, almost to the day. I had it done on this side because over the course of a year, all I had done was PT for this shoulder, but then this shoulder continued to measurably stretch out. That's when my doctor said, there's something else going on here besides over swimming. Because I wasn't swimming anymore. I had stopped. I was still coaching, but I stopped swimming myself. And I got very lucky. Most people, a lot of people, it takes years to get a diagnosis for EDS because there's so many different symptoms. You know, and I'll go into more of that later, or in another video, but there's so many different things and so many doctors haven't heard of it. And I got very lucky because my surgeon's wife actually has EDS. It's the only way that I got diagnosed as early as I did. I was 20 years old when I got diagnosed. So, but again, this next statement is going to make me feel really old. There wasn't Google, you know, there wasn't the internet really when I was diagnosed. Oh, that sounds awful. So this was in 1995, and I was 20 years old. Just got diagnosed with this thing, and all he said was, you know, you have to be careful of your joints, your collagen. Collagen is faulty and it stretches. You'll have to get your heart checked all the time or often, and so that's all I heard was get my heart checked, and I was flipping out a bit. But there wasn't really a place to research it or find out more about it, so I just kind of avoided what hurt, just was careful and went about my merry way. Didn't have too many troubles, you know, up until in my mid-20s. My husband and I got married at 24, and then my husband and I started a family, and I was pregnant, and the weight of the pregnancy on my hips really they spread a lot more than normal, and then the sciatica pains just because everything was moving around so much. Oh, and I could also do party tricks with my hips always. I could kind of pop it out and make the band snap, snapping hips, and I could make the ligaments slap right over the bone, and it's really loud and really dramatic. So I love freaking people out with that. But again, I just avoided what bothered it too much. But you can't get away from it with pregnancy. So, that caused some issues. And I'm going to talk about my pregnancies in a whole nother video because it's too much. But here's the gist of it, because I at least want to get it in my timeline here. So I'm 26 years old. My son, Cameron, he's 14 now. My son, Cameron, was 2 months early. I started going into labor at 30 weeks, and my cervix started dilating. Now, when, contractions make the cervix dilate, or the cervix dilating can trigger contractions. We think that is what happened because, connective tissue. My cervix wouldn't stay closed. They call it incompetent cervix. I guess it fits into that definition. We got to hold off. I was in the hospital on bed rest for 2 weeks. As soon as they stopped the drugs that kept me from contracting, he was delivered. Had to have an emergency C-section because he was coming out arm first. The doctor said he shook hands with him when he went to see how far I was dilated, shook hands with Cameron. So he was 2 months early. So basically I've been pregnant 5 times. I've delivered 3 sons, and I have 2 living sons now. After Cameron, my son Brady, my first pregnancy was ectopic. Rushed to the emergency room, left tube removed. Second was Cameron. Third was our son Brady, who I started contracting at 18 weeks. Went for my normal 18-week anomaly sonogram. You could watch my cervix open on screen. His feet would go in, feet would come out, and my cervix would close back up. And they actually called people into the room to watch this. And we all just watched this on the screen. Open up, his feet would go in, come out, and close back up. So they wanted me to get stitched up that day, like immediately. And while I was getting ready for it, I was sitting there, IV was going, ready to go in, and I said, I think I'm having contractions. They hooked me up to the monitor, and I was contracting every, I think it was 3 to 5 minutes maybe. So they sent me home on bed rest with medicine, and after a couple weeks of that, so that was 20 weeks, my dad took me to another hospital, and I never left. They said, I was already dilated 3 centimeters. They said, we can try to stop it, or you can let nature take its course, and he'll be born now. I said, well, of course we're going to try to stop it. And so I was in the hospital in Trendelenburg, which means your feet are elevated above your head to keep pressure off of the cervix. So I was like that for 2 weeks, hoping to not get an infection, and just hoping everything, we'd at least get to 24 weeks, because that's the earliest they'll try to save a baby. Get to that, and then the next step, and try to get to the next one. And, at 22 and a half weeks, my contractions started again, and we couldn't get them to stop, and placenta abrupted, and gave birth to our son Brady. And he had a heartbeat for about half an hour, and we had him baptized and everything. Again, I'll go more into that story. That deserves a whole thing itself. But so we were done after that. We figure we have our miracle, we're done. And in the spring of 2006, that was 2005, spring of 2006, I found out I was pregnant. Didn't mean to get pregnant. Thought I couldn't without fertility drugs. So yes, I can. And I miscarried at 6.5 weeks. EDS may or may not have had anything to do with that. There's no way of knowing. And then my 5th pregnancy is our son Matthew, the reason his name is Matthew is it means gift of God, and that there's no other reason for why he is here. I prayed about it, and, you know, we had baby on our mind again, and said, I can give it one more shot. And 2 weeks later, I was pregnant with him. So then again, luckily we sewed my cervix closed early at 14 weeks, drugs to try to keep from contracting, started labor 28 weeks. We were able to hold it off on bed rest until 35 weeks, and then he was coming, and we had to get me there before he broke through the stitch. So, and then he was born at 35 weeks, and almost 7 pounds, and he's a miracle. There's no worldly reason why that child is here. He's totally because of God, both of them. So then we started wondering if all this stuff, and I told my doctors after we lost Brady, they realized, oh, you have Ehlers Danlos syndrome, and they hadn't never brought it up before, and they thought that may have had something to do with it. But again, we didn't really think about it a whole lot. It wasn't causing too many everyday troubles, as far as major troubles, you know. And I was teaching, and this was now 2009. I was teaching, and my body stopped cooperating. I spasmed in my neck so badly, the sternocleidomastoid. I spasmed in the side so badly, I couldn't turn my head to the left for 3 months. I had many different therapists and stuff working on it. It took 3 months to get it moving again. And then we Googled it. And I said, I wonder if all this stuff, you know, and I had other things. I had like torn muscles on the top of my foot, reaching for something in a cabinet. You know, just, you've all been there. You know, it's like you do all these things, and then you think, oh, I wonder if that's connected to EDS, because there's no other explanation for it. And so we Googled it. And, you know, this checklist of all the signs and symptoms of EDS came up, and my husband and my jaw just dropped, because we went down this list and it was like check, 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 check. Even things like overcrowded jaw. Like, I've had 16 teeth pulled. 16 teeth pulled. That includes my 4 wisdom teeth, but I've had 16 pulled because it was too small. My jaw was too small to hold on my teeth. You know, high palate and all that stuff. Who would have thought that that has anything to do with it? So there's just so many things that were on that list that I was like, we need to take this more seriously. And then went to Hopkins, went to Dr. Levy at Hopkins. He's a geneticist. He is phenomenal with genetics, and, you know, said I want to just make sure that this is still actually what it is, because it had been so long since I'd been diagnosed, and he confirmed it. And, you know, it's been managing it ever since. I stopped working in 2009, hoping to go back, but never made it back. And I did receive disability. I will explain that. That is very important that I explain how I got disability, to help some of you. I got disability my first try under 4 months. So I definitely have some suggestions, you know, that can help. And please, if you have any specific questions, put them in the comments below, and I will do my best to answer them. Oh, this video is getting really long. I'm sorry. Maybe I'll split it into 2 parts or something. So basically, since then, I had hip surgery 2 years ago because my labrum tore in my right hip. Had that fixed. A year and a half later, it tore again. And next Monday, on November 22nd, 2 days before Thanksgiving, I'm having it fixed again, but this time I'm having it reconstructed with allografts, you know, with cadaver parts. And the doctor said whatever else he sees in there while he's there that he can fix and feels confident about it, he will do. So I said, I'm your guinea pig. I'm fine with whatever. To find a doctor, it's taken me several doctors to try to find one that will do it. We've even gone up to New York to the hospital for special surgeries to find a doctor that would touch me, you know, and that even fell through. So I found a doctor that, by looking up an article, researching an article about hip labrums and EDS, and he wrote an article about hip labrum reconstruction in his Ehlers Danlos patients. So I saw him a few weeks ago, and we already have this scheduled. So, and the reason why I wanted to do this now and really get some videos up this week is because of this surgery coming up. And I want to kind of be able to go through it, maybe vlog about it, you know, and kind of go through that with people, with others, with you, you know, to hopefully help whoever watches it. Maybe it can help them feel brave about trying surgery, or just to know what to expect in any way. And I don't know, for a lot of reasons. So I'm hoping maybe to even do a video every day this week. We'll see how that goes. I'm not good at editing. So I had another video to put up, and I messed it up somehow because I had to figure out Movie Maker better. Okay, so I know that was I was long-winded, and I skipped a lot of stuff, but basically from 15 to now has been my, you know, my big chunk of dealing with EDS. And I've left out the headaches, and I've had injections into my skull, into my occipital lobe, trying to help some of the neck pain and headaches and this. I mean, it's amazing what we go through to try to get help. I've had so many injections in my spine. I had 5 in my spine at one time, and I have a friend of mine here that has had over 80 procedures in her life. I mean, it's ridiculous. But okay, I'm going to stop now because I've been talking a long time. But please, if there's anything you want to know more about, any questions you have, anything that you want me to talk about, you know, please do not hesitate to ask. I really want to start forming friendships through YouTube here. So thank you for joining me. Thank you for sticking with me for this long. And I'll talk to you soon. Bye-bye.